The life you're about to live is that of a geisha in ancient Japan. You were born in Kyoto during the Edo period. Your father was a poor fabric dyer. You had beautiful big eyes, and the neighbors all said you would grow up to be a beauty. When you were 6, the family could no longer put food on the table. Your father sold you to an okiya in Gion for 5 ryo of silver. As you were led away, your mother chased after you crying the entire way, but your father never looked back. An okiya is where geisha are raised and trained. The proprietress was called Matsu. In her 40s, she had been a famous geisha in Gion in her youth. She looked you up and down and said your frame was good, just too thin. They'd fatten you up first. The okiya housed 7 or 8 girls around your age. Every day before dawn you'd rise to clean the entire house, then begin learning etiquette, how to walk, how to bow, how to pour tea. Every movement had strict requirements. At 8, you began learning dance. Your instructor was a bad-tempered old woman who would smack your hands with a fan at the slightest misstep. Your hands were covered in bruises, but you dared not cry. Crying earned a harder beating. At 10 you learned shamisen. At 11 the tea ceremony and flower arrangement. You discovered a gift for the shamisen. Your playing made even Matsu stop and listen. For the first time, she smiled at you. At 14, you officially became a maiko, an apprentice geisha. Matsu gave you the stage name Kajiku. On your debut day, you wore your first formal furosode kimono, your face painted thick white, with just a touch of red on your lower lip. Your older sister geisha was called Hanatsuki. She took you to your first banquet. Your hands were trembling with nerves, but under the table, Hanatsuki quietly squeezed your hand. She whispered, "Don't be scared, just smile." The guests were intrigued by your new face. You poured their sake, performed dances, and chatted with them. For the first time, you realized that smiling is a skill and the hardest one to master. At 16, you graduated from maiko to full geisha. You replaced the elaborate hair ornaments with a simpler, more elegant style. Your kimono shifted from vivid to more subdued colors. In this world, the more mature you become, the more understated you must be. Your reputation as a shamisen player spread quickly. Kyoto's tea houses competed to book you for banquets, and some patrons requested you by name. Matsu began assigning you to the highest tier events, attended by daimyo lords and wealthy merchants. At one banquet, you met a young samurai. Unlike the other guests, he sat quietly and listened to you play. Afterward, he told you your shamisen reminded him of autumn in his homeland. That night, for the first time, you felt something real for a patron. But Matsu soon noticed your feelings. She called you over and said something you would never forget. A geisha's heart is not her own. It belongs to whoever pays the most. If you want to fall in love, pack your things and leave. You buried those feelings and never again let your heart stir for a patron. You began to truly understand. A geisha sells artistry and companionship, never emotion. Emotion is the greatest luxury in this trade. At 19, Kyoto's biggest silk merchant chose you and became your dana, your long-term patron. Each month, he paid the okiya a large sum of silver in exchange for your priority companionship. In the geisha world, this was the highest form of recognition. With your dana support, you could finally wear the finest kimono and use the best cosmetics. You became one of Gion's most sought-after geisha. When you walked along Hanamikoji, passers-by would stop to stare. At 23, you took on your first apprentice. She reminded you of yourself when you'd first arrived at the okiya, small, timid, eyes full of unease. You were far gentler with her than Matsu had been with you. By 25, you were the pillar of Gion. But you noticed more and more young maiko appearing, and patrons' eyes slowly shifting to younger faces. In this profession, beauty's shelf life is shorter than you'd ever imagined. You shifted your focus to teaching and management. Matsu was getting old and handed more responsibilities to you. You learned how to run an okiya, negotiate rates with tea house owners, and balance the relationships between patrons. The year you turned 30, your dana's business collapsed. He came to see you one last time, drank through the entire night, then bowed deeply and said he was sorry. You didn't blame him. You simply played his favorite shamisen piece, softly. After losing your dana, The financial pressure mounted suddenly. But you had built enough reputation and connections. You began running the Okiya yourself, and Matsu officially passed the entire business to you. After 35, you rarely attended banquets anymore. You poured all your energy into training the next generation. Your Okiya produced several top geisha, and everyone in Gion said Kajiku had an unerring eye. Every girl she trained was exceptional. At 40, you ran into that young samurai on the street. His temples were gray now. He'd become a retainer for a small domain. He recognized you, and you sat together in a small tea house for an entire afternoon. He said he had always remembered that autumn melody you played. When you parted that day, he looked back at you once. You looked back at him once. You both knew that in this life, what is missed stays missed. Some regrets can never be spoken, even in old age. At 50, you handed the Okiya to your most accomplished disciple. You bought a small house in Arashiyama on the outskirts of Kyoto. Each day you watched the maple leaves and played your shamisen. Occasionally, an old patron would visit, and you'd brew fine tea and reminisce. In the autumn of your 67th year, you departed this world quietly, to the sound of a shamisen. In this life, you went from a poor girl sold away by her family to the brightest star in Gion, and then returned to simplicity. Your life proved that even when fate pushes you into a world where nothing is your own choice, talent can still win you dignity. The sound of your shamisen still echoes along Hanamikoji in Gion. This has been your life simulation, the life of a Japanese geisha.